Big Cypress Seminole Reservation, for me, that's where I started experiencing poverty. We all need each other. We all need to connect with each other, and that's what this life is designed for.
Welcome to Unblocked. This series of podcasts is part of the Florida International University Commons for Justice, Race, Risk, and Resilience Mellon Grant Project, and on this podcast, we aim to discuss disaster exposures, vulnerabilities, and resilience from an Indigenous perspective. I'm Mitzi Uehara Carter, and I'm the director of the Global Indigenous Forum. We're here with Samuel Tommie in the Big Cypress Reservation, sitting under a tiki hut just a few miles down from the Atatiki Museum, which everyone here in South Florida really should visit. Samuel is a dear friend. He's a board member for the Global Indigenous Forum, which is where we met. He's an artist, a musician, a videographer, and an environmental advocate. Sammy is a member of the Seminole Tribe of Indians, and he also identifies his Native American cultural and ethnic background as Miccosukee. He was born on an island of the River of Grass and grew up in various areas of the Florida Everglades. So we've asked Samuel to be here with us today to talk a little bit about his artwork and to also share some of his experiences about growing up on the tree islands here in the Everglades and how his Miccosukee perspectives have helped him carve out his own form of advocacy and activism to fight and protect the Everglades. Thank you, Sammy, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much.
We'll start talking about the latest art piece that you did that was commissioned by the Little Haiti Cultural Arts Foundation, the Cultural Complex that commissioned it for a broader exhibit on a call to ancestors. But I was really struck by that painting and the story behind it and what inspired you to paint it.
Okay.
Can you tell me a little bit about that painting?
Yes, the title of the painting is called We Return. The painting itself is actually 7 feet tall and 7 feet wide. It's actually a square canvas, but it's placed so it looks like a diamond. And the shape of it represents the patchwork of what the Miccosukee Seminole women make. So they make these kind of like quilt work, but the patchwork designs have been developed here in South Florida back in the early 20s, but also the shapes and designs pretty much go back for hundreds of years. And so it's my homage to the women for their craft. And most of all, these patchworks would be put on jackets and clothing, and your mother would make you a Seminole jacket, a jacket with many patchwork designs on it. And that was to show love. So it comes from a woman's pride and love and joy, and to let you know that you're greatly cared for and you're a special person. So that's what it really means. And so the diamond shape is one of the outlines of the patchworks that the women make. That's the beginning of that. The painting itself it's about a couple on a canoe, dugout canoe, and it represents the time period of like 1800s when the Miccosukees and Seminoles came out to the Everglades area. And it represents the time when our people and our cultural, our hearts and our minds were very pure and they were untainted. And they're on a canoe and they're floating towards you, but the clouds they are on represent spirituality and way of thinking. And it also has a three-dimensional effect that you have to move around the room where the canoe is pointing towards you as you move around the room. And as you study it more, the man that's on the canoe on the back end does move across the canvas. So This whole effect is, I put it there to put the message that we return. And so today we are seeking to really, really reconnect with our past, our heritage, our ancestors. We are sincerely and full-heartedly making our efforts, and our young people are sincerely interested. And so we are at the generations with my people where we do want to reconnect with our past. Times are different because there's been a time period where we lost our traditions, our teachings, and our identity as well. Our language, we've lost, you know, uh, our young people have lost the ability to understand our language. So now we are going through a different time period. I hope to make it clear that this is the message coming from this painting.
I love that. And when I saw it, I felt that sense for like, yes, you're trying to reach out, like in every way. I mean, the as you said, the people on the boat are following you, right?
Yeah,
And so there's this sense that you're really trying to reach the viewer, the audience, and now I hear it in the story that you are specifically trying to get more of the youth to come back to some of these traditions that have been lost, and to have it on the water. Is there a significance in terms of having your subjects on the canoe in the water?
yeah. They're actually floating on purple clouds, which
Oh, that's right.
represents the spirituality and a way of thinking or thoughts. That's where our spirituality and the way we think is from the past, but it's also happening now. That's what that represents. If you look at the painting with the man who's on the back end of the canoe, and they're both facing forward, the color of his clothing and a little bit of the sky in the background is red. That represents the wars that we have gone through. And as you look at the young lady sitting up front, the colors of her clothing represents the earth and the water. And also the beads that she's wearing around her neck represents the sacred colors of the Seminole tribe. And the color white, which represents a new beginning, a new cycle, is right on her heart. That's what we are going through. And that's what we believe. Life is a cycle. You start with a yellow beginning, and the red is the really powerful time, and then the black represents death, and the white represents the seed of what has gone through, and it's a rebirth of what has fell dead. So that's what's on there. It's
Wow, there's a lot. There's a lot of layers and meanings, and that sense of renewal is so beautiful. I know you were inspired somewhat by a lot of the changes that you're seeing, in terms of young people trying to grasp and find meaning today more so than ever. But is there another inspiration for your painting? Like why were you drawn to that subject matter? What made you
um,
feel compelled to start
I
there?
was really grateful to the Little Haiti Cultural Complex and everyone that was involved. And what really inspired me was that I like the fact that there's different groups of people with different backgrounds coming together at this time. I come from a nationality where in this country we really don't have a voice, and we're not supposed to have a voice. And going through all these years knowing that and experiencing it, that's very frustrating. And so in order to see a group of people that band together and work together and bringing out the truth and things that are going on today, for humanity and so forth, that's what really made me, very excited. And I found that very inspirational. I have people around me who care.
I know that for a lot of Seminole and Miccosukee people, the women are very powerful holders of knowledge and tradition. Were you influenced by maybe some of the patchwork of the women in your family?
Oh, yes. When I was growing up, my first 5 years was actually, I lived on an island out in the middle of the Everglades, west of Miami. And that was complete paradise. And then we moved to Big Cypress Seminole Reservation, which is north of where I was born. And the landscape was totally different, and the community structure was totally different. And it brought a lot of hardships for me as living out here. What I started experiencing at early ages was that we were below poverty. And I know my grandparents always kept us fed and so forth, but we were definitely below poverty. I remember during those times when I was growing up, my mother did the Seminole Miccosukee patchworks. She made the designs, and she would sell that. People would buy that from her and make jackets and dresses. And at that time, she would make less than minimum wage, but she never complained. She just, got us what we needed when she could. This is where I came from. And so the patchwork designs is a very serious part of my life and a very serious part of our tribal history.
That was before you came to the reservation?
No,
or
no,
that
no,
was
that's
when
here on
that
Big
was
Cypress Seminole
okay.
Reservation. Yeah. Big Cypress Seminole Reservation, for me, that's where I started experiencing poverty. Well, below poverty.
As opposed to being out on the Tree Islands.
Yeah,
where
that's a whole
it
different
was.
paradise story. Yeah, that's a totally different world.
In what way?
The social structure itself and being in an environment which is to native or indigenous people of this land, there are parts of this land which provides a feeling of security and where you feel comfortable enough that you're going to start actually feeling spiritual quality in your life. And so the open prairie or the sawgrass prairie of the Everglades where the islands are, that's a spiritual experience and spiritual nourishment that we came for. We are very spiritual people, and we came to those areas for a reason. Like I said, that is a whole different world. And coming to Big Cypress Seminole Reservation, it's a whole different spiritual quality coming from Earth. There's a lot of negative places out here, and the community's aware of that. There's a lot of negative spots out here as well because the Third Seminole War happened in this area. There's a lot of places where many people were killed. And yeah, spirituality is a whole different world.
Wow. And you came here when you were in like third grade or I forget.
No, I came here. Big Cypress Seminole Reservation became more of my permanent residence when I was like about 4 or 5. About 5, yeah. A whole different story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I'm always fascinated by your story because it's like you have these two world views, having that experience of growing up in that really special, beautiful way. And I hear the way that you talk about it with such love and that transition of moving here is, even when you talk about the differences in social structure, I've heard you mention that before, that's it had a different way of shaping your experiences in life and maybe worldview to some extent. And it seems as if there's this longing for a return to that life, right?
Yeah, first time I tried to, after we were living here, I was probably, I don't know, I guess age 5. I probably had to be like age 4. That's the first time I ran away from home because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go through these woods. I just want to see a place that looks like home. There's too many trees, too much land. I just want to see that something looks like home. So I just like escaped and went through all the woods and on my own, and I couldn't find this open area, sawgrass area, tree islands. I could not find anything like that. And I'm like, I'm not happy, but I guess I probably should turn and go home. And I'm going back the same direction, but things look different. So I'm scared, you know?
Yeah, at 4 or 5.
Yeah, I was really scared, but I remember making it home, and for some reason that experience is like always stood out in my mind really strong, you know?
So we've moved. We've moved locations, and we are in this beautiful, huge, gorgeous tiki hut in Samuel's mom's home here in Big Cypress, and it's a lot quieter. So we can have a conversation that's a little less interrupted by pressure washers. So thanks for bringing us here, Samuel. I think I was really kind of on a new line of questioning regarding your worldviews that you've gained from having this life on the tree islands, and coming to the reservation and having a totally different life, and that was such a huge adjustment. But I'm interested in how that eventually perhaps led you to this world of advocacy and activism. I see you at so many different events. Like, I see you doing work that's in support of other organizations. I see you doing work on climate change. I see you, whether it be in your art or in, just showing up and being present for other people's causes, but also really for the earth. And I'm interested in what led you to these actions.
I would say that I pretty much started advocating for the Everglades probably like 35 years ago. I didn't realize that before, but as I look back, that's what happened. And back in late 1980s and early 90s, I worked as airboat tour guide with the Miccosukee Tribe of Florida.
Hmm.
And that's when I was hearing that the fish are poisoned by mercury. You can eat only so much at a time or don't eat any of it. So that told me that, something was seriously wrong. And so as a tour guide, I started telling people that, there's a problem out here and that it's going to be affecting all the other animals as well. There's deers out there, panthers, raccoons, and bears, and they drink this water. So I knew something was wrong, and for me, it was very disturbing, and I just kind of disturbed, who I am. It just kind of touched my soul in a very sad way. So I was telling people that there's a problem. There's all these chemicals coming from Lake Okeechobee up north and flowing down south. And because of that, there's excessive growth of the vegetation out there as well, and changing the landscape. And people would were interested to hear that, but some people would say like, well, what should we do about it? And I was like, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
That was like very early times. All I know is that something was ultimately wrong. For us, it is a sacred area. All the water is sacred to life, and all that water there supports all life. So for me, it was a very devastating awakening. And so that's where it started. And over the years, I have supported different environmental advocates. And at one point as well, too, I was spearheading protests against Florida Power and Light because they were planning to build one of the largest power plants out here, north side of the Big Cypress Seminole Reservation. So I just want to make sure that did not happen. And Most of other times I'm at marches, protests. I'm there to support them. And I've supported the marches like from Naples to Miami several times to educate and to protect the place. And I've also supported the prayer walks, which was led by Betty Osceola. And we did 118 miles around Lake Okeechobee. I'm always showing up these places, and mostly because I'm very thankful for what everyone is doing. And so this is where my support comes in for everybody else out there. And I've been wanting to go back into music and art, and I needed that because it's being concerned about political causes, the climate problems, being concerned about the growing problems for the environment. It becomes very frustrating because the people who are in political offices are not going to change the laws. And I came to understand that only when the leadership changes and the laws change, I'm going to see any changes. I'm just going to get frustrated wanting to see a change. So I came back to doing art as in paintings and music and like in flute, and also like playing acoustic guitars and writing my own songs. That was my way of just, reaching myself again, because it's unhealthy fighting for the environment when the whole country doesn't have laws that protect what is sacred. Also, the playing flute, I go to different events. First time I did that was in 2011, a big, I think it was international group, but they asked me to come do blessings for them. So that was the first time I did land acknowledgement. And after that, I think I picked everything up again, like 2016 or 17, where I actually went to conferences where they were asking an Indigenous person to come in and, just welcome everybody to be here. And so I started picking up on that role, and I went to an incredible events, and I pretty much represented the cultural side of the Miccosukee Seminoles communities. I'm not a tribal official representative, so my role is that when I go out, I talk about a little bit of history and the cultural teachings that we have and why I'm there. Most of the times begin with a prayer flute, or I would close my presentation with playing flute. But what I do is I bring prayers, and I receive these flute melodies from sacred places throughout the country, as well as the Everglades. And if I can feel spirituality somewhere in a city where it's kind of quiet and have a little bit of natures, I will sit there and look for that inspiration. But most important of all, it's been important for me to go to sacred places, sacred mountains, and draw the inspiration from there. And I always know what this song is for. The one I share most often is a healing song. And one of my best memories is that I played 3 songs at Adrian Arts Theater, the Creative Time Summit that happened in 2018. It was an honor to play for them. I was amazed that later on in the program, as I walked around among the crowds, people were coming and telling me that they were actually healed, and they're very thankful for the experiences they've received. So that's the response I get. And these prayer songs, I did not sit down and compose them. I had to be at the sacred places in order for it to happen. And so when I play my songs, I consider it alive, and I might have a structure to the song, but I'm not going to follow it completely. If I'm compelled, my songs, spiritual songs, are not set in stone. It happens according to the life and frequencies that's coming from everyone and everything that's happening at the moment, including the universe and everything that's happening here and now. Because that is the true spirituality. It's just true vibrations and life itself. And for me, that is the meaning of spirituality, and this is what I share.
It's beautiful. Gosh, that's really powerful, and I can see why people will come to you and say, I feel healed. Do any of you, like your pieces, speak to, I know you've talked about, the poisoning of the earth and why you are drawn to showing up for people and also advocating for change, and also healing. But do you also specifically, are you addressing in any of your pieces the way that you see the climate changing through disasters, or the ways that people are responding to disasters, like the hurricanes or wildfires, any of these kinds of major events that we're seeing much more at a greater intensity in South Florida? Because I ask this because we just walked through the museum here, and not to sound over romanticized, but there's this really beautiful knowledge that is not recognized, because as Indigenous knowledge, people marginalize it as something folky, but it's scientific, it's smart, it's powerful, like the Kunti root, using that to know you can grind up this poisonous plant and create a flour out of it and have sustenance, and then also leave a little bit for the colonizers to come and be poisoned by it, which is a crack up to me. So smart on another front. But that kind of knowledge of medicine, of plants, of your land and botany, and all of that is so vibrant. And people, I see a lot of Indigenous people, not just here but across the world, have found ways to harness that knowledge to be resilient, right, against all of these disasters. And I'm curious if you have, how you've seen, Seminoles and Miccosukee respond to these disasters, kind of returning to some of these traditional knowledge. When you speak of return in your picture, in your painting, there's this yearning for this, coming back to this traditional knowledge that to some extent has been lost.
I hear that, what you're saying, and people are like, for the environment, things are happening, climate change, and things are going to get worse. So what is the native wisdom, and, what can you share with us? And I hear that. What's interesting for me is that I have heard of all these catastrophes, the warming of the earth, the hurricanes, the fires. I heard that it was going to come since I was a child. So it has been with my parents. So it has been with my grandparents. So we've heard about all of this.
You mean passed down from stories or from?
We've always heard that, these things will happen. And I've seen everything unfold, and I was like totally amazed. How did they know these things were going to happen? So that is, I think that's most of us, our experiences, the ones that are like the articulated generations. Personally, when it comes to the environment, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? It seems like the best advice that I've come to now is nothing's going to change until you change this people who are supposed to be in leadership. They're not leadership. They just know how to manipulate the masses. They know how to do that very well. You have manipulators controlling money. That's what they're doing. So when those people change and you put leadership in there, and when you change laws, that's when there's going to be a difference. And that's what I have learned. And so I really don't know what to say this is how you have to deal
Mm-hmm.
with the new changes. I've always been taught, when I was young, that if a hurricane comes, we don't run away. We just hunker down. You never run away from it. And so that's what I know. Like if changes are coming, you know, just ground yourself and deal with what's coming
Mm-hmm.
and be prepared for what's going to be coming. And I assume everybody knows that.
I'm here sitting with Diane Benitez and Sebastian, who is also with our podcast crew. And I want to also give them an opportunity to ask any questions that you're thinking about as you're listening in. And I know you're not on the mic, but we can pick up your voices.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask if you think that people have lost their sense of connection to nature, and if that's something that can be regained or something you can reconnect with.
Yeah, very much, because we're talking about two different cultures, two different worlds. And when Europeans came here, their world, the way they do things is that it's me and this is my property. And here, everything was like, everything is sacred. It belongs to the creator. And so there's two different worlds, and then there's a serious clash that has happened, but things are pretty much still the same because a lot of European mentality still exists to where it's hard to like for people to just kind of like connect with nature and because of the cultures. And so I think that it's probably detaching yourself from a lot of technology things and making more time for the reconnecting with nature itself, which could be going out into the natural world. That would help a lot. That is what people need to do. And when the disconnecting from technology is something to really think about. The most important thing that I know I can say is that every person has to learn how to appreciate their own inner voice. Every person has to learn to appreciate their divine purpose and what they can do. Every person has to learn to channel themselves with nature as part of spirituality. And I'm sure everything that's a chaos can be part of spirituality too. But it depends on how you nourish yourself. Because for me, a human body and human mind and human soul has to be aligned with the creation, which is the frequencies. For me, that's the divine order, and that's what life is about. So that's what needs to happen. And the most important thing, my message I have is that each person has to embrace their unique selves. Why am I saying that? Because we are running into a time period where, once again, there are people out there, the manipulators have become more aggressive and they want to take people's minds. They want to influence people's minds. They want to sabotage people's minds. They want to hijack people's minds. That's where we at, and that's what we're facing, and that's where we're going to be going. It's a spiritual battle that we are going into right now, and this is the best way I can identify, about the spiritual battlefields that we are heading into now. Times are different.
That's a really great response. I think when I saw you performing, I think it was a prayer song for outside of the Miami Seaquarium, Tokite.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, it was interesting hearing some people talk about that event, people who were not Indigenous who could understand why there was such an intensity to save her. And it really kind of separated her being outside of, as being non-kin right? To understand that she was like a relative was very hard for some people to understand, within our cosmology, right? It's a very foreign concept to think that an animal is not related, that it's not kin. It's a very native kind of way of thinking, right? That it's not separate, like nature is not a separate entity, that we're all holistically a part of each other, but especially when you can trace your lineage to to certain animal groups, and so listening to you in that setting was really telling about kind of that reinforcement of this this alignment, right, of the vibrations, so that she could hear, and that it's not a, for me, when I heard you ask that question, that was really interesting, because it's I think oftentimes we think of nature as this is outside of us, and maybe instead of thinking of it as a binary, to think of it as maybe we've even like framing it that way, we have to really come back to it as a part of us that might have been distanced at some point, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, that we all need each other. We all need to connect with each other, and that's what this life is designed. That's what it was designed for. It's amazing that on this continent, that was the experience the inhabitants were experiencing. Like how you like to go to a place, a land where the people living there, see everything is very sacred. See the flowers on the ground, it has potential to cure something. And it's full of mystery. There's so many things we don't know yet, but how would you like to go to land where everybody appreciates that and live like that, and knowing that you have to tune your frequencies and be part of the frequencies all the time, and it comes to a point where, like, the indigenous people on this land, as I'm sure other parts of the world too, they were communicating distance without technology, and some dream forms or meditative forms. So a person's mind can be, when it's evolved, these are all the things we could do. There's just, we could heal one another probably without any technology, by using frequencies and so forth. So how we like to go to a land that's like that. They just respect all life around them, and they have stories about the animals, and they would say that one time the animals would talk to us, and they also like bring wisdom to us. And what that really means is that, after a very long time of observing animals, you can see life in a whole different way. They show you how to behave. They show you what to eat, what to do, and so forth. And there's so many things that could be learned from, and it was learned from. So that's the land that was here. And then we have this whole different mentality that came here, and let's see, we're going to control everybody's brains by saying all these people that live on this land are savages, and that was the beginning.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of the
downfall. Yeah, and not being able to recognize all of that extensive knowledge and alignment and beauty, and all those years of observation and analysis, and just not valued is very sad and heartbreaking to hear. And the fact that we have a hard time being able to tell those stories, especially in our political climate, is very upsetting as well.
Yeah,
because it's not valued. But I'm glad that you are continuing to tell the stories through your art, through your appearances at these events, with us here today in this podcast, in all the ways that you do. I appreciate you so much, Samuel, and I know that our broader community does as well. So, did you have any last words that you wanted to impart with our listeners?
I guess maybe I'll save some stuff. A lot of our prophecies we were, not allowed to talk about things,
Right.
but then comes a time where it's okay because times are changing and people are becoming more aware of things that are going on. And so, yeah, I remember, many things that my grandparents talked about and all these knowledges, the prophecies that were received because of the time that they took for their spirituality. And that's how they received all these knowledges that we have and we hold. And it's also something that we have to protect. And also nowadays, any information Native Americans have, they want to suck it out of these Native American tribes and
sell it, bottle it up and sell it.
that's where it's at right now. And I believe there are a lot of tribes who do not speak their language, and they did not have the ability to keep their oral traditions safe because, if they've given up all their old traditions and so forth, they don't have much left. They don't have anything left. So the integrity of indigenous people of this land is very, very important. And it's also very important that we find ways to protect it so that they save it because, the system, the machine that's in place is they just want to suck everything, every living thing out of, the indigenous way of life and everything that they are, because that's how the system works. And if only a few people live, and if indigenous people don't live, they got this knowledge, I guess. But if indigenous people are giving up their oral traditions and so forth and not keeping it safe like they've done for hundreds of years, they keep it safe, they have wisdom keepers, and they keep it safe within themselves. That's their integrity. And that's the last things that we are holding on to, because everything else, all of our rights have been pretty much abolished. And, under political terms and policies, in Palestine, they call it open air prison. I think I've been living in an open air prison for a very long time.
Thank you.
Yeah, from there, that's a whole another story.
That is a whole nother story. I could continue on and on, but thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. And so it's a matter of, like I said earlier, I was really happy to know that there are groups of people who are from diverse background, from all races and all countries. And in these days and times, and I'm glad such people with heart exists. And not only a big heart, but they're willing to take action and make changes happen. But not only that, they're willing to stand up and make sure the voice is heard for the diversified, human life. And so I'm really, it's what makes me feel energized. So I'm really happy to see this is what's happening. And I hope to show up for them wherever I can. But I wish everyone that wants to be on the fight for the truth and life itself, I hope that they stay strong and give the truth voice.
We have a saying in Okinawa, it's Nuchi de Takara. It's an Okinawan word. It's not Japanese. It's an indigenous language, and it's life is precious, and they use that term in so many contexts. But we do a lot of ancestral worship in Okinawa, so a lot of that sentiment comes from the power of our ancestral love and knowledge And so when you talk, I'm thinking, Nuchidu Takara.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's our show. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to learn more about the Commons for Justice and to listen to our other episodes, go to commonsforjustice.fiu.edu. If you'd like to learn more about the Global Indigenous Forum or more about this podcast, Unblocked, please follow us on Instagram at FIU_GIF or go to our website, indigenous.fiu.edu. This episode was produced by me, Mitzi Uehara Carter. The audio engineer for the show is Diane Benitez. The audio and post-production editing was done by Sebastian Rocha Alvarez. Thank you to the Mellon Foundation's Just Future Initiatives for their support on this podcast.